Okay, this is SportsCorp. We have about four tables, which is games, likes, scores, users. So to connect to the database, we shall come to our system here, and we need to create a specific file that uses that finds all mechanisms possible to connect to the database. And that mechanism is that we have two in PHP. Um, One is called PDO and another one is called MySQLi. So PDO is PHP data object, whereby since we are building something in object-oriented programming language, you create one of the objects, and the purpose of that entire class of that object is to connect to the database, and then you keep on calling this specific file for database connection. Whereas um, MySQLi was created to specifically work with MySQL or MySQL databases. So to create such a file, you need to create, and let's see where we can place it based on our setup. We can place it under, we can place it under config, and here we can create a file and call it db.php. Sorry, small letters db.php. You need to pay close attention um, to which letters you write. So just like any other PHP, we start with the opening tag of PHP, which is that, and this should close with a closing tag of PHP, but even if you don't add it, it doesn't. It's not a crime. So mm, first things first, we shall need to declare the key variables that connect to our database. And the first one is always the host. The host of this database, unless your database is remote, is often localhost. But if you don't want to write localhost, you can you can simply write the IP address that was reserved for localhost internationally, and that is 127.0.0.1. Every time you write 127.0.0.1, it means the same with localhost. But I would prefer most times if you wrote this IP, because for some hosting providers, writing localhost would not work very well, especially Hostinga. Then you write the name of the database which we created, which is SportsCorp. As you can see here, the name of our database is SportsCorp. I'm sorry. And then who is the database user of our database? You see, where is that? Mm, When you look at the different databases we have SportsCorp Test, PHPMyAdmin, MySQL Information Schema. But we've created SportsCorp, and who's the user of SportsCorp? That's most likely root, possibly. So we say the user is root, and by default, XAMPP does not attribute any password to root. So we can leave it as empty as it is. We shall see. And then after, we shall declare a new variable that we are going to call DSN. Okay, and we are going to say that DSN um, is MySQL, and in MySQL we want to get the host, attach it to the DB name, and we want to collect everything from there in that format that is appropriate. So DSN um, is a database sort notation. I think that's the name in full, but you can just cram it as DSN. Is a unique variable we declare in PDO to connect to the database where we attach these things and in the format we really want them. And then you start providing the different options that you need your database to be connected. Now that we've connected, you can declare options, And as you can see, these different options that the IDE suggested are as follows. I'm trying to talk about the meanings of these different ones that we have on this database. The very first one, which is attribute error mode. Attribute error mode ensures that at least the database can strike in any errors just in case they've been there with the exact names. Then it should always fetch the default stuff from there in associative array method. And then if it prepares it, we've set the preparation of emulating the preparations to false so that no one can emulate interacting with our database without prior authorization, and this is for safety purposes. Now, having declared that, we can easily now do the try catch. The try catch is a mechanism in programming, not just in PHP. It's also there in all other languages, whereby you write your code inside the try method so that in case whatever you've written does not succeed very well, it's caught up by whatever you put in the catch method. So we are trying a new variable you're calling PDO, which creates a new connection that would call DSN that has our full connection, the username of our database, the password of our database, and all the options all together so that we can connect to the database. And if everything fails, we should strike an error that said database failed for reason ABCD that we would have gotten from the database. Now here we are seeing something new, and this thing is called die. You see, we've seen so much of these two things. One is die. Die means that if a connection fails, the script will stop executing and display the error message. So this is useful for debugging purposes, but in production, it's we need to handle it gracefully. So if a database dies, the script will stop and display the error message. But there is another thing that we have in database that is not die, and that thing is called exit. So exit, for them, they are saying that is an alias of die. So you can use either one of the result. Both functions will terminate the script and the output of the specified message. But you see, to just understand when you should use exit and when you should use die is this. When someone dies, there is a reason for their death. Why did they die? These people died because of ABCD. But when someone exits and they just leave Earth, let's say one morning I'm like a Muchwez, I just go to heaven, then I leave no reason. So exit will not leave a reason when it terminates the connection. Now, PDO is not the only way we connect to the database. There is a second alternative, and the second alternative is called MySQLi. So I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call it database.php. In database.php, I'm going to create a MySQLi version of how we connect to the database, which is the second alternative. But I would mostly recommend the first one we started with. In MySQLi, it's a little bit more close because in that here, for example, we shall say that we have the host, and the host is 127.0.0.1 .0.0.1, and then we can say we have the port, which I said is 3306. Close attention, we didn't need a port in the previous connection, but in this one we need to specify the port. Thirdly, we need what we call the database name, which is probably Sportscope. So here we can say maybe Sportscope, and then Okay. Then we need the user of this database, which is probably root, and we need the password, which was empty password. So after declaring those key variables, we say that my SQLi report is that. What does that mean? Is that we are getting a full report of errors, and we are getting MySQLi report to be strict in format. This is standard. After doing this, we create our try catch as well, where we say that our connection, yeah, this is okay. We can say that our connection, or you can call it MySQLi, whatever you wish, is new MySQLi into brackets, where we get all the things we declare that are about our database: the host, the username, the password, the database user, and the port. And then we say that all this should tend to the format we want it. I want you to have a side-by-side comparison of these two methods: the object layer and the incremental one. This one, we are saying that everything here tends to this format, whereas here we said that it was just appended, that we wanted everything in chasset UTF-8 format, and here we're just appending it. Then we catch by saying that MySQLi exception should be the database failed because of ABCD. This is simpler if you'll keep on declaring it at the beginning of each and every database, but it gets tougher when you move forward. So this is how we declare databases in PHP. So I hope you can see the difference. A minute. All right. I was saying, I hope you can see the huge difference between these two. Database.php, where we used MySQLi, we are mostly looking at an incremental way of connecting the database, which is quite straightforward, though not reusable like the object one. Here we just declare everything about our database. We ensure that we get the full report of errors and being strict when we are communicating. Then in our try catch, our code is simple. We get a variable of our choice, for example, cont for connection here, and then we say is a new MySQLi project, sorry, connection to the host username, password, database name, and port. And then we say that we want it in this format, or else give us an error. This is straightforward, and it ensures that we just open the database, retrieve data, then close the connection. Whereas in the object-oriented one, we ensure that we collect everything, we append everything together, we collect all the information, and then that's when we connect to the database. So, how do we connect to this? How do we connect to this when you are back to your code? Where is this file called code.php? So how do we connect to that database that you've just seen earlier? To connect to the database, you need something very special, and it's called require. Require. There are two types of things. There is require and then require once. And I'm going to tell you the difference between the two. Require means that a specific file you're trying to attach at the beginning of the file is required for this particular file to run. Without that particular file, this file will not run. Whereas require once means that this file should not be redeclared within this own file. So it should be required once. and after that it's not needed anymore. It's needed at that stage of the code. If you want, if something happens to the database file, this file also won't work. So if you want this code to continue working when the database connection is off, then you need to use include instead of require, and you should use include once instead of require once. So for us, since we really need it, we shall say that require once database config get db.php. This will call upon that. Then, since everything has been declared here about the database connection, we don't need to tell that from this and that. So if we want anything from this database, for example, in this um, so I can just say that results should give us, just a minute. I've remembered we had added routing, but it's okay. So uh, for that we use a specific, there is a specific um magic, we call them magic variables. Yeah, we can call them magic functions, and one of them is a magic function for getting a directory of something, and it's dir underscore, and then we append the exact location of this file. So this will skip our reliance to the routes that we declared earlier. So what does this mean? It means that require once the directory of this file database.php. Did we call it database.php? We called it db.php. So I need to change that to db. Require once db.php. Then after doing that, we shall say that we are going to start declaring what we call a statement that we shall declare by the word statement, which is a PDO query. Now you can see that from this file, we are catching this whatever has been called here. So the moment you declare this PDO, it goes back to the file we've added and then it queries. So you can see why how MySQL comes in here, because this is MySQL but within PHP. So we are saying that we are querying select everything. That means it's a wildcard, which means everything from users table. Do we have the users table in this database though? Mm, yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yeah, so we are selecting everything from the users table. All right. And then we are saying that therefore users as a variable is a statement where we fetch all. Then we want to print them as an array. So we can say, or we can choose not to print them as an array. This is also a good idea. Let me see that suggestion again. So we can say that for each users as user, print user ID and name as name. Let me see if we have ID and name in the database. Users table, we have the ID and username. We don't have name, so we shall say and username. So ID and name as username. We break Cool. That's cool. So uh, if we run code.php, unless we have issues with our database connection, this should work very well. So we can say localhost /code/code.php. All right. We have an issue with connecting the database. And go to failed to open. See still stress thrown on line 2, where we try to connect to this database. Config. Okay, let's first come back to db.php. Is this correct? Let's try and see. Failed opening required. No such a file in directory, spot scope. So they are unable to see this file, db.php. Like, honestly, if I remove this, what does this mean? Fig. Okay. And then I come and refresh. Yes, perfect. So you can see that this has helped us to connect to the database successfully, and in doing so, we've been able um, to get an array from our database. Wow, we got everything the way you see it in this database table. Oopsie. So the way you can see everything here, these people have been brought into the front end. User ID 1 is Alex, 2 is Jamie, 3 is Sarah. So this is how we connect to the database in PHP. Now this will help you to populate anything in your database in your front end by collecting data from the database. I hope that helps a lot, and that's today's class. And I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, thank you. And I know it's late, but we shall continue from there.